Hi folks. It may not be apparent from watching my videos, but I have been keenly aware for the past, maybe the past couple of years, that I feel that I have been losing my way to an extent. Because it's just the feeling that something's not quite right. Something's missing. Something about my spiritual life, if such a term is even appropriate. Because I find myself preoccupied with trying to fill a perceived void in my life with entertainments, to strive against boredom, and in interpersonal relationships, sometimes things annoy me in a way that I don't think they should, that they didn't used to. And I just feel out of sorts. Always restless, empty. You see, I can contrast this with how I felt 5 years ago, say, maybe more. This all began for me, this whole spiritual path. This all began about almost 7 years ago now. So in the early days, I can recall the kind of consciousness I had, and it was better than what I have now. So I've regressed in some fashion. I can remember how there was a feeling of excitement and anticipation as I was putting all this together, because I realized that I didn't have all the answers, and I still don't, of course. So part of the problem is probably just that I've done so much learning over the past 7 years, and the insights don't come as easily as they used to, or I've put as many of the building blocks of this philosophy together as is reasonably possible. So, this is expected, in other words, to an extent. But there's more to it than that. That's only a small part of it, because I can remember how I liked nothing better than to come home from work, to make a meal for myself, and then to go out on my bicycle for a ride through the countryside, and maybe to end up on this hillside that was on the edge of town, that was kind of a favourite spot of mine. And I'd sit down and I'd take off my backpack and take out a book, and I'd read for a while, and it would be maybe fiction or non-fiction. I would read for a while, and then I would put the book down, and I would just sit there for a while and look around me and think about life, the universe, and everything, and feel completely well and completely grounded, without any sense of striving, without any need to work against boredom. The pieces fitted together in a way that was deeply satisfying. And I've lost that. I've lost that. But I think I'm starting to get it back. And I think it just has to do with where you put your focus. And I may have made an important mistake at some point in this whole process. And I think I may have identified what it was. I was always very sensitive about the term enlightenment or awakening or liberation, these terms that signify a once for all time definite change that happens within a person. It's too much like the Christian concept of salvation. And I don't think I'm wrong. And those people who feel that they have attained some kind of cosmic consciousness are frauds. I've talked about this before. And you can expose them as frauds by simply telling them to, if they believe they have conquered suffering, tell them to stick their hand in a flame. And then we can see how detached from their ego they really are. So, my idea was that there's nothing wrong with the ego just as it is. Even though you know that the ego is not an actual self, is not an actual entity, there is still ego awareness, ego consciousness going on within an organism, a creature such as us. It has to be that, because you can't survive otherwise. How are you going to defend yourself against someone coming at you with a knife, for instance? Not that that is likely to happen, but it's within the realm of possibility that you could be attacked by someone, by a wild animal even. If someone was coming at me with a knife and I were to say, oh, it doesn't matter if they destroy me, this body is not the real me, I am the whole universe. Doesn't matter if Darrell Sloan perishes, I go on as everything else. That does not seem like a healthy way to look at that situation, even though the truth of the matter really is that every single one of us is the universe. There's no separation between anything. It's still not healthy or practical to have that kind of consciousness, and nobody really can. We have very natural aversions to pain and survival mechanisms that are largely unconscious, and they just kick in automatically in those situations. But the mistake I was making, to keep this video on track, the mistake that I was making was that I saw these two kinds of consciousness as two very stark alternatives to each other. You can have cosmic consciousness or you can have ego consciousness, and there's nothing in between. But that's the mistake. There is something in between. You can choose to live as close as is humanly possible to the view that we're all one, that everything in the universe is one, that there is no self in here, that the true self is the whole, is everything. Or you can live as close as possible to the idea that you really do exist in here, that you are alienated from the world around you, that you are a independent self. You can choose to live with that. Now, with that latter position comes all the psychological difficulties that I've been experiencing in recent years. I'm me, you're you, we're separate, I gotta look after this guy. I gotta make sure he comes out on top. Competitiveness. Again, that's totally natural. But I think we can probably realize, if we really think about it, that the more we choose to live as close as possible to that sort of cosmic consciousness that isn't ultimately realizable in the flesh, but you can get some ways on that path, the closer we choose to be to that, the happier we will be, and the better this world would be, the more people chose to be like that. You see what I'm getting at? I've just come in from a very long walk where I was listening to a talk by Alan Watts, one of my favourite speakers and authors. And it was bringing it all back. It was just kind of, helping me to relax again and occupy my mind with things of a more transcendent nature than just merely, oh, I didn't have a good day at work today, so and so annoyed me, or something like that, you know, or just feeling the directionlessness of my life, that I'm just going to while away another few years, another few decades, and then I'm going to die. If you just think about yourself as an ego, then all we're really doing is just moving stuff around until we die. So you have to have that cosmic perspective on life. You have to understand that consciousness is a dimension of existence, not just a thing sitting inside a brain. And we are all consciousness. We are not individuals, ultimately. So anyway, I didn't plan this video, but I just felt like saying that. So anyway, we'll see where this goes. Bye.